What's up, guys? I'm back here. Just me today. We are in the final hours. The final hours of what we once knew as this great land called America. What we once knew as liberties and freedoms that we will soon realize we took for granted. We've got 3 hours until the day of inauguration. We are right here in the final hours of the Biden administration. He already wrote us his love letter goodbye. Pretty much told us, you better figure it out. You better stop bickering, because we're talking about what? We're talking about what? Some sale you shot, some broad you're trying to screw, some guy don't want to buy land. Let's talk about something important. As a little ode to Glenn Gary, let's talk about something important. What makes me feel like it's important? Well, these are things that many of our grandparents fought for, to have the basic rights against fascism that we're seeing take over our country. We see an active oligarchy coming into power tomorrow. And I don't normally want to talk politics, but at this point, my hand has been forced. I have no choice. I have to say a few things today. I have to share some thoughts and ideas that I think are the more important conversations than whether or not we'll be able to watch dances on TikTok, whether or not Trump is, going to put 20 million into his inauguration, whether or not police are racist against black people. There's a lot of topics that just don't matter. They let us bicker amongst ourselves. They separate us. They divide us. They continue us down this ideological path that doesn't work, that we know doesn't work at this point. We've followed the path of keeping our distance from each other as Americans. We followed the path of ignoring each other, keeping each other at arm's length. We're more afraid of each other as fellow citizens of this great country than we are of who we should be afraid of. And that's the oligarchs, the CEOs, the big powers, the billionaires. The separation in wealth has never been so devastating. And you know what those billionaires love? Those billionaires love when we do nothing but talk about things that really don't affect their narrative, things that don't even affect our lives. We separate ourselves on some idea of a trans person being on a Bud Light commercial, and all of a sudden the whole country is divided on that subject when it only affects a small percentage of our population. Yet it occupies a high percentage of our minds. And why? By design. By design. The powers that be, the oligarchs that are taking over this country tomorrow, are tickled to death that we're more worried about whether we're jumping on Red Note or whether we can keep our TikTok. Meanwhile, the very things that those on the other side of the aisle, my brother in Christ, you Trump voter out there, I want to have a message of unity amongst Americans rather than unity amongst American corporations. That's all we've seen of late, is unity of the wealthy against the poor, while the poor bicker with each other about skin tone, about the differences of culture. Meanwhile, we have so much in common that we need to connect on, or we are not going to make it through this. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but we are between a rock and a hard place as American people. What's the rock? Well, political parties. The idea that we're somehow radically different in how we think, when in reality, the majority of us are in the middle. The majority of us agree on most things. Corporate tax should be higher, amen. Income tax, wage tax should be lower, amen. This is fundamental. And whether you knew that or not, my dear Trump voter, you absolutely voted against your own interests in the majority of cases. This person is not for us. This man is not for us, the American people. He is for the select. He is for the ultra rich. He looks at only the scoreboard of who's making how much and how. Is it innovative? Is it different in his mind? Is it ballsy? Is it just basically wrong on every moral compass known to man, and he'll respect that person more. For example, our lovely friend Elon Musk, our dear president and leader, who's actually in charge of this show at this point and trying to take over the show over in Great Britain. He's somebody that has absolutely no interest of the American people in mind. He is somebody that basically has met the scoreboard of money, and that has earned his way into the actual fucking Eisenhower building at our White House, the people's house. It's beyond me how we can overlook these things, whether you voted for either side at this point, but we have to look down the barrel of the fact that this country was founded on an idea that American citizens are what make up this great land, not the government. American citizens are what shape our lives, being able to connect with each other, help each other, and soon it'll be vital that we can rely on each other. We've got to look past melanin levels in our skin. We've got to look past the history that we were taught. We have to look at where we are in the present and how much does it help us to hate each other? How much does it help us to fear each other? Because if you thought the price of eggs was high under Biden, buckle up. Buckle the fuck up, because it's already, almost doubled since Trump has become our president-elect. And we knew that. The majority of us knew that no one is going to affect the price of eggs. And certainly not the guy with, 7 bankruptcies in his history? The only person ever in history to fail at opening a fucking casino? If you can't run a casino right, then you're not trying. You know, that's like starving to death in a grocery store. We can't imagine this man has the economic prowess to come in and lower our grocery prices. We cannot be that ignorant. And especially as we see the egg prices continue to double, he promises to tariff everything that we use, everything that we acquire from Mexico, Canada, China. These are the main imports. These are what we rely on. 60% of our oil supply comes from Canada. And now they're talking about stopping oil exports from Canada to the U.S. to combat this new trade war. You know, you talk about this is not normal. I couldn't have told you that at any point a U.S. president wanted to annex Canada. That's a joke. You couldn't even write that movie. No one would watch it. It's an absolute ridiculous idea. It's insanity. And that's actually what the discussion that we're having these days is. We're going to take our own brothers in NATO to war over their land and their minerals. We need that strategically to steal things from our own brothers in arms in NATO. No one wants us over there. No, Canada wants nothing to do with us. It's absolute lunacy. And all of this stuff is just distractions from what they're about to do. What's that? They're about to bend us over with no lube. Okay? Okay? That's where we're going. I don't care who you voted for. It's going to not really matter a whole lot soon because we're all going to be fucked. We're going to be going through something that is unprecedented. We know that for sure. And even the level of uncertainty is unprecedented. Whether we end up in war or not, in this country, it is going to become, I fear, somewhat of a financial war between the classes. Between these ultra mega rich that we don't fucking need and billionaires and everybody else. Everybody else. The only way that we can get through that is to have some idea of getting past these divides, past this feeling that, oh, well, this person's of a different background, different color, different religion. So, I don't need to think of them as anything like me. We're all unique snowflakes here, right? And it's a bunch of bullshit. It's not good for us. We need to unite. The blue states that really look down, I think, in a lot of ways, a quality of life on red states, we need to stop doing that. Red states, when you look at blue states and you say, oh, golly, all these liberal laws and high taxes, well, that is going to become very little importance when the fit really hits the shan. We have to remember that we're all Americans. We have to help each other through this because right now, Whether we like it or not, we're being strapped onto a fucking ride that nobody wants to be on. Maybe you didn't want to be on the Kamala ride, but I'm sure as hell that no one on the MAGA side of our country wanted trade wars with Canada, higher prices on everything, austerity measures given to us by a South African who is basically a maniacal villain trying to take over the fucking world. No one wants that. No one wanted any of this. And while you might be happy that we don't have a woman in the White House or whatever bigotry that kept you from feeling that Kamala, in some sense of sanity, would have been a better vote than this nonsense, at some point we all are going to have to move past that if we're going to get through the next 4 to 16 years. We're going to have to say, hey, I don't care who you voted for. I care about you and really care about our neighbors. And if we can all do that, and we can pay attention to what is being done with these sweeping executive orders, this promise of shock and awe that has been given as a mandate to America, as if we are now the Iraqi citizens living in Baghdad during the invasion. I mean, shock and awe is what we have to get ready for. I keep hearing you better get ready. Get ready for the new Trump administration. And I don't know what the fuck that means. How do you get ready for fascism? I didn't join the armed forces. I'm not interested in engaging in that fight, but we have been fighting this thing called fascism for 100 years or more. It's not a new idea, but they've pretty much taken it out of our understanding as citizens. They've taken it out of the education system, so we can't even recognize fascism when it rears its ugly head. Most of us hear that and think of some old-timey word from the Korean times, or, the biggest bad no-no word would be communism, but I promise you fascism is worse. And have you ever heard of Mussolini, Adolf, right? These are bad guys. And you don't have to be a history major to see this. But unfortunately, in this country, we've decided to not invest in education for so fucking long that we wouldn't know a fascist if he was right in front of us, guiding us to our death. And I'm afraid that that's more or less what we are doing right now. We have the strongest military in the history of mankind. And it is being now commandeered by an absolute fucking loose cannon. In less than 3 hours, an insane person is going to take over the most powerful military force ever in history at a time geopolitically where there's more contention than ever. There's more proxy wars. There's more civil wars. There's economic wars. There's hacking wars, right? There's a lot going on. And this message could get quite dark if we don't focus on the fact that we are the people, the United States of Americans. But we have to decide that, not at the ballot box, because we've let those old guys try to solve our problems domestically, solve our problems of quality of life for too long with no result. And at some point now, we have seen the gears of capitalism push us into classes, and now there's a very black and white existence. You're either with the ultra rich or you're not. And if you're not of that socioeconomic class, yet you're pretending to be that you agree with those fools, that is going to become obvious. You're going to be showing your ass to your fellow Americans how big of a cuck you are for rich folks like Bezos, like asshole grifters like Trump. I don't agree with Kamala on everything that she wanted either. I don't think that was our best alternative candidate. But golly, have we signed up for a shit show. And at this point, I'm almost glad, because it forces us as Americans to come together. These are the types of things that will correct the market of disparity between the rich and the poor, because we will be facing either revolution or famine if we don't come together. If we don't keep an eye on what these people are doing down at the Capitol and Congress, we don't keep an eye on what the president is proposing, whether he decides to go ahead and cut our Social Security, cut veteran benefits, cut Medicaid. There's a lot of things on the table. We have no idea how bad this could get. But it has to be clear to everyone Well, the 99% that aren't billionaires, that aren't ultra wealthy, it has to be obvious to all of us that our infighting is not helping us. It's not helping our children's quality of life. It's not helping us, guys. The racism is not helping us, guys. We're no longer going to be qualified in this world by color. That was retarded to begin with. But now it's very obvious that we are in classes. We have to realize that and realize that our class has the most power. But only if we cannot let them distract us. This utter bullshit that they constantly throw at us in the news that we should be so afraid of that doesn't fucking matter. Does the existence of TikTok matter? No, fuck no. What matters is what the hell these people that were just appointed to the cabinet are going to do. What is Pete Hegseth going to do with the Pentagon? That fucking matters. We need to pay attention to that. We need to talk more about things like that and less about their distracting topics that want to keep us kind of satiated with distractions. Meanwhile, they're robbing this country. And they could potentially dismantle every system of democracy that we have at this point. With the Supreme Court ruling allowing the president to pretty much do whatever he wants, it's going to become dangerous just to even have a voice on this thing, to have a voice in the world against the powers that be, the oligarchs that are going to run this country and the politicians that are going to be raking in money from these assholes. And to me, that's just hard to imagine in America where we feel like fucking Russians. We feel like the citizens of Baghdad that were killed by the millions when we invaded because of shock and awe. And then being given the same rhetoric of shock and awe to get ready for our own invasion by the rich that's happening in 2 hours and 50 minutes. I'll tell you, I'm already in shock and awe that they would even use that terminology to articulate what they're about to do to the American economy, to the American people. Between these tariffs, the idea of annexing NATO countries, annexing Canada, going in trade wars with everyone, it's absolute fucking lunacy. And I think a lot of people in this country were basically voting for anarchy. And it kind of makes sense in some perverse way in my mind. It kind of makes sense to vote fuck this, basically, to vote no more of whatever the hell we have been doing. But the problem is by putting our pain that we have and then handing it to somebody who promises to fix it, but never fucking will, has no interest in helping us. It's of good intention to change things. But unfortunately, I fear that my fellow brothers in Christ, the Trump voters out there, fell for the greatest grift in history. As we come up on 250 years of this great country existing and the average empire lasting about that, I refuse to believe that we would fall into the same category of a 250-year empire. We are far too strong economically and in a military sense to just go away, to just kind of fade away into the night. America, as an empire, so to speak, is too powerful, too big to fail, you might say, in our own way. Because if it comes down to true famine and economic disaster, then you know that the leaders and the powers that be in this country will use the military industrial complex to go take over, to go take from people. That's what we will do. We are bullies. We're not going to just cease to exist. But unfortunately, our way of life may cease to exist. Our children's future may all but cease to exist. And the only way around that at this point is, of course, voting and, paying attention, maybe getting involved in politics if, you believe in the Constitution, going back to our constitutional rights, not parties, going back to what it means to be American originally, when the founders founded this country, that American citizens are what make up this country, not the government, and that we can recognize that and do more for each other. Even on a micro level will make a macro difference. We have to put our differences aside. We have to evolve. If we stick with the old ideologies of separation and allowing these old fuckers down in Congress to figure out our problems, we've seen where that gets us. It's like digging a hole, just going further and further behind because we're not evolving. We're still thinking that maybe that elephant will save us. No, that donkey will. It's bullshit. Neither will. We have to have a revolution of thought. We have to have evolution within our soul of a populace, of a citizenship, of what it means to actually be American, to have liberties and freedoms. And that does mean that we have a responsibility to each other, not to just show up and vote and piss and moan at whatever the other side does. We have a responsibility to care about each other as the non-ultra wealthy, right? You got the ultra wealthy and the not ultra wealthy. And unfortunately, chances are quite high, if you're listening to this, you are not quite there, right? You're not ultra wealthy. And that means that hatred of fellow status members that are on every economic sense and power in this country sense on the same playing field. We have to band together. I've been saying we need an independent candidate in the White House for years, but it isn't even regarding politics. It could be just in regard to how we think about each other, how we hate each other so much at this point. And for what reason? For the reasons that were given to us by someone else on the news or in politics. Reasons that were, in my speculation, invented by the ultra wealthy to divide us. Even going back to days of segregation. Why did they do that? Well, a divided electorate doesn't have the same power against them. So we really have to set our differences aside in any particular realm of argument of past politics and really start looking at our own quality of life, at our rights that we were given by being born Americans or naturalized if you came from another country. I mean, that's what this country was built on. So we have to graduate, we have to evolve to the next level. This could be singularity for us as the American people. This could be the pain and pressure that forces us into evolving. Evolving into a new way of thinking, a place where skin color and background and culture, religion just doesn't matter. We stop judging each other, start being empathetic more. Thinking, how can I help? How can I connect? Not how can I stay away from or avoid? It's going to take leadership. It's going to take leadership on a community level and beyond that. But I think it really is going to just start within each of our minds that we have to know they want us infighting. They want us in the North thinking the South are all uneducated and a bunch of women haters and all these negative things that just aren't true. It's just not true. We see more and more people leaving those states that have taken the rights, reproductive rights from women, because we all, the majority of us, agree on fundamental things. The majority of us are in the middle. But they don't want us to think that. The news doesn't want us to think that. Big tech and social media doesn't want us to think that. These algorithms are getting deep in our psyche and changing how we perceive reality itself. Digitally gaslighting how we interact with the world, how we think about ourselves and our relationship with all other people. Maybe it's the death of social media as well. That's a whole nother discussion, but it shouldn't be. It should be the pressure to evolve past the algorithm's understanding, past what they can do to change our outlook. You know, take some time and search the other side's media. Take a look at what's important to them, because the truth is that both parties, both sides are right on a lot of different things, but they're also wrong on some things on both sides, right? And so we can all agree on what the middle will be and what that will look like, but we have to start a dialogue. We have to start something that isn't black and white anymore. Those days have to die. We have to treat our fellow Americans as if that's what they are. They are brothers in the family of this country. We have to get closer or we are going to fall apart. It's interesting how the ban of TikTok ended up being some point of solidarity, because on both sides, people were pissed. On both sides, we feel like, fuck you, I'm going to go to the actual Chinese Communist Party's app now in Red Note, which speaks volumes towards the stupidity of the average person, but also the rebel, the American rebel that's in all of us. It says, fuck you to any authoritarian government that's going to tell us what we're going to do here in this country. Wrong fucking place. You're not going to make it as an authoritarian here. And the only way that we can really show that message is showing a message of solidarity. Having gatherings in places where they are fucking up, right? Let's say hypothetically in a few states, they make some laws that are just way the fuck out of line. Well, we need to be able to have rallies of Americans, not just rallies of Democrats, not just the Proud Boys getting together, the Boogaloos, or, you know, the NAACP over here gathering. We need American gathering, something like the Women's March. When record number of people came out to protest when Trump was elected and it was a women's march, imagine if it was just Americans' march. That's what we need. That's what the non-ultra wealthy need, is organization and understanding. Saying, hey, yes, I do my hair different than you do, but guess what? We are brothers in arms in the economic war, in the ideological war of rich versus poor. We got to move past our way of thinking of donkey and elephant. We got to move past our way of thinking of Fox or MSNBC. Both of them suck, right? All of that sucks. We have to evolve. I'm hoping this could at least get that seed planted in someone's mind somewhere, and we can start having that discussion about who was it that decided we should be divided? Who was it that told us that we're not like them, even though we absolutely are? Because to not be too cheesy or melodramatic here, the real truth of it is that we all believe in fundamental constitutional rights that makes it red, white, and blue in our veins, not our skin tone, our religion, our background, our belief on abortion. These things just divide us from the things that matter: quality of life, opportunities, and growth economically, a fair tax code that taxes corporations, not taxes people like their corporations, the value of honesty, which is more and more lost on our youth as time goes on. Honesty, basic things. And it's going to take leadership from every generation right now and unification on a level that is unprecedented in any human history. It will require that under this pressure. And I'll tell you that I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that we can do it. I'm hopeful that this will change us. I'm hopeful this is the pain that we needed to go through. Because there's nowhere, where are we going, guys? We're here. We're on this ride. So let's buckle up, but let's lock arms. Let's stop being the United Corporations of America. We can decide. We can decide that that's not what we are. And we're not just the United States anymore. We're United Americans.